I saw you with her.
How could you do this to me?
Hey, buckle up for another wild, out-of-this-space tale from our corner of the internet. Because nobody hides a fully charged, mysterious phone on Do Not Disturb just to organize Tupperware swaps, right? Right now, something's rotten, and it's centered squarely on OP's marriage. I found my cheating wife's secret phone. She told her parents I was lying, so I showed them the evidence. I need advice on what to do about my wife and that hidden device. Normally, I'm the kind of guy who talks things out and #calls out problems immediately, but this situation feels like it needs a different approach. I'm 31, male, and my wife Carrie is 29. She's never given any hint she had another phone until I stumbled on it. I had never seen it, she never mentioned it, and I had absolutely no idea what might be on it because I couldn't access it. Here's everything. We've been together 6 years and married for 4, and I never once stepped out on her. I assumed she felt the same. Even now I'm not 100% certain she's been physically unfaithful, but honestly, the evidence looks bad. I haven't seen classic signs of cheating, no sudden secrecy, no dramatic changes. So maybe she's just the kind of person who hides things well. Still, a second phone? That screams intentional secrecy, and that alarmed me. I wasn't snooping when I found the phone, I was trying to reorganize our chaotic closet. Her things were spilling onto my side, and I just wanted to tidy up. While moving her bags, I found that old purse I'd bought her a few weeks after we got engaged, the one she used to cherish but hadn't used lately. I figured she'd stopped using it because it looked dated, and I didn't judge her for that. When I grabbed the purse, I felt something shift inside, so I reached in and pulled out a second phone, an older, cheap model. I had no clue where it came from or why she'd been hiding it. At first I attempted to rationalize it, maybe an unused backup, maybe a present she never showed me. But the phone wasn't in a box, and Carrie knows I'm picky about devices. I'd pick them out myself. It was too old to be a recent gift, and the more I thought, the worse the explanations sounded. Realistically, a secret, inexpensive phone is almost always a red flag in a marriage. Checking the contents would be the fastest way to get the truth, but of course it wasn't simple. The phone was powered on and charged, which made me think she was actively using it, and it was set to Do Not Disturb with notifications hidden on the lock screen. I tried to guess the passcode but couldn't crack it. The device was basically a high-tech brick to me. So I was left with a few options and no clean path forward. I could have marched into the living room with the phone and demanded an explanation, since I value blunt communication, but I suspected that wouldn't work. Even if she opened it and it looked innocent, I'd still be suspicious. I also worried that confronting her too soon would give her time to concoct some cover story and erase anything incriminating. Another option was to pretend I didn't know and watch for slips, to monitor her and wait for her to use it, but that meant living a lie and hoping she didn't destroy the evidence. That idea felt like the riskiest. The last choice was trying to bypass the passcode somehow. Maybe a repair shop could help, but I knew they wouldn't touch it without proof it belonged to me, and I didn't want to get into any legal mess. So for the time being I stuck the phone back in the bag and tried to act normal, while my head spun with suspicion. I couldn't look at her the same way and found myself questioning every little thing she said or did. Weirdly, nothing about her behavior changed outwardly, no cold shoulders, no weird habits. If I hadn't found the phone, I'd have sworn everything was fine. Part of me desperately wanted that innocent explanation to be true. I didn't want to wreck our marriage over suspicion, but I also couldn't ignore the fact that she'd been keeping a secret from me. I had to figure out how deep this betrayal ran. So I asked you all, what's the smart move? Confront her with the phone in hand and demand answers? Pretend I'm clueless and wait to catch her in the act? Or try to find a covert way into the phone first before making any moves? Honestly, there's no harmless hobby that accounts for a fully charged, hidden phone on Do Not Disturb. She didn't stash that thing to run a surprise puppy adoption ring. If there'd been a legitimate reason, it would have come up long ago. Thanks to everyone who commented, I read every single response, and a lot of advice lined up with my instincts. Don't confront too early, don't let her know I'm onto her until I have solid proof. A lot of people also urged me to get my finances and documents in order, just in case. It felt like a betrayal to start prepping for divorce before I was absolutely sure she'd cheated, but I also couldn't afford to be sentimental. I had to be smart. So I left the phone where I found it and started watching carefully. I took notes on a note app and logged every movement I could. I tracked every time she left sight and where she went. I recorded how long she stayed away. That's how I noticed something off. Her bathroom time had gone from long showers to nearly an hour at a time, which struck me as odd. Normally, I wouldn't have noticed because I was in my home office wrapping up work while she showered. But once I saw the pattern, the pieces started fitting together. She was using that secret phone during her evening showers. When she next took a really long shower, I checked her bag to see if the phone was there. It wasn't. Now I knew she was using it in the bathroom at that precise moment. This felt like my best shot to catch her in the act and maybe grab the device before she could unlock or hide it. I debated bursting into the bathroom to snatch the phone, but I also considered that she might lock the door. I decided to test the knob first. If it opened, I'd go in, and if it didn't, I'd bide my time and catch her leaving. I tried the handle and it turned. The door was unlocked. She probably thought I was busy somewhere else in the house, like usual, so she didn't expect me to barge in. I didn't give myself a second to think. I pushed the door open and saw her sitting fully clothed on the toilet, frozen, the second phone in her hand. She looked like a deer in headlights, and I moved fast, 2 strides, and the phone was in my grip before she could react. She screamed, lunged, and nearly grabbed it back, but I stepped away and held the phone with my thumb on the screen so it wouldn't lock. I asked her to explain the secret phone, and she spat out, "It's my work phone, you idiot." She sounded sincere, and if I hadn't been thinking clearly, that might have unsettled me. I asked if the phone would only show work messages if I looked through it. She said I couldn't see it because it had sensitive work material. She insisted it was a work phone and I had no right to pry, but I didn't press the "why are you hiding it on the toilet" question. I didn't need to. The phone was in my hands and I intended to know the truth. She followed me into the living room, restless and panicked, like she might make a grab for the phone at any second. I began swiping through the device without arguing. Her work phone story unraveled immediately. There was just one contact saved as K, and the messages were not professional at all. They were flirtatious, sexual, intimate, and unmistakably personal. The exchanges had been going on for months, nearly every day. I looked at her and asked flatly whether this was work. She sank down and put her head in her hands, silent for a long minute, and then tried to say it wasn't what it looked like. She claimed she'd only been looking for companionship and that nothing physical had happened. She told me the guy, K, was someone she'd met online via Instagram DMs, that he'd slid into her messages, and that the conversation had escalated into this. She insisted they'd never met and that it was all fantasy, a harmless escape, and not something she meant to pursue in real life. I asked if that made it better. Real or not, she'd been emotionally unfaithful. She'd been texting a stranger about wanting to be with him, exchanging pictures, and arranging fantasies while going to great lengths to cover it all up, a burner phone, a nightly routine, secrecy. That harmless fantasy was layered on months of lies and planned deception. She cried when I described how I saw it all. She apologized and said she hadn't meant to hurt me, that's why she kept it from me. I told her that was a weak excuse and that I couldn't trust her anymore. She closed the distance and I held up a hand to keep her away. She asked what I was trying to say and I told her plainly, I wanted a divorce. I felt like I was staring at someone I didn't know and I couldn't picture ever forgiving her for this. Admitting that was one of the hardest things I'd done, but I knew pretending we could fix it would cause more damage than walking away. While all this played out, I was taking screenshots of the messages and texting them to my own number, because the minute I gave the phone back the evidence could vanish. That phone was my proof, and I wasn't about to lose it. When I finished, I placed the phone on the coffee table and told her she could take it back, but warned I wasn't stupid enough to let her clear anything without me securing proof first. She went pale and I could tell she realized it was really over. I was protecting myself for the divorce that would follow. She begged for another chance, promised to delete social media and go to counseling, but I didn't respond to the pleas. I met with a divorce lawyer the next day. She moved out and back in with her parents. I told them and everyone else exactly why we were separating, and I was surprised that some people said I'd overreacted. One friend of mine even split with his girlfriend because she insisted what my wife had done wasn't cheating. She argued that unless it was physical, it didn't count. I think my friend made the right call. Excusing emotional betrayal so readily is a dangerous slope. Once the divorce process began in earnest, she flipped when she realized I was serious. Her tune changed from crying and begging to calling me controlling and paranoid, accusing me of ruining our marriage and claiming it could have been saved if I'd fought harder. Each time she said that I reminded her she was the one sexting a stranger on a secret phone. Eventually, I stopped picking up her calls and let the legal process move forward. I spent money on a competent lawyer and it paid off. She didn't request alimony, and I didn't press to find out whether she'd had a change of heart or simply backed down. I just accepted the result. When everything settled, I kept the house, though I had to pay her a settlement so she wouldn't claim the property. And she remained living with her parents because she couldn't afford the mortgage payments. Later I learned, through a call from her parents, that the divorce shattered her. When she wasn't at work, she was moping and barely functioning. Her parents were crushed to hear about the split and worried about their daughter, and her dad reached out to me, saying he hadn't wanted to intervene but was concerned about her. He said she'd become a shadow of herself and that, according to her, I'd overreacted after she'd made a friend online who'd turned a bit romantic. He told me he hoped I'd reconsider and give her a chance. I almost laughed at how brazenly she'd lied, and I didn't blame him for believing his daughter. I just explained that she'd also lied to him and had a knack for convincing people with half-truths. I sent him screenshots that showed messages where the guy called her by her name and where she'd written about wanting to meet him, including recent messages proving she hadn't cut things off before I caught her. He was stunned and, once the reality sank in, he apologized and admitted he wouldn't have urged reconciliation if he'd known the truth. I told him I understood and that it wasn't his fault his daughter had chosen to deceive. After that, things fell apart for Carrie. She called me crying, begging, and accusing me of destroying her life, saying her dad had barged into her room after my conversation and erupted at her for lying. That argument between her and her parents ended with her deciding to move out. She went to live with her sister. I thought about telling her sister the truth, but her dad had already beaten me to it. Now she was living with family who didn't trust her and who saw her as the liar she'd become. She even had the gall to ask if she could have a room in my house, promising to stay out of the way during the day and be invisible. I told her that wasn't going to happen. I'd spent thousands to get her out, and I had no intention of letting her back into the life she'd broken. She didn't call again, and that silence felt final to me. She'd hit bottom and had nowhere to turn. Maybe she'd learn something from this, maybe she wouldn't. All I knew was that she was someone else's problem now. Anyone who downplays months of intimate texting, a burner phone, and arranged meetups is either delusional or hoping you are. People telling me I overreacted were flashing their own red flags. Emotional cheating isn't a victimless act, it's a deliberate breach of trust. And Carrie asking to move back in after lying to everyone? I don't owe her a soft place to land when she set her own life on fire. Now she has to sit with the consequences. What would you do in this situation? I wanted to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below. And thanks for sticking with this story. Thanks for joining me today. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next one. Until next time.